You are. Have fun, take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. You like this?
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here. Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down. Lock it down. 14.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field.
It's not working. Oh, there it is. Okay, good. Welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. And first round of the second round of the playoffs. That's just weird. But race 1 of the second round. That's better. Of the playoffs. Back to Kansas for the Hollywood Casino 400. In the spring, we saw the closest finish in NASCAR history. Something like 0.001 seconds, separating Kyle Larson from Chris Buescher. Boy, I bet you Chris Buescher wish he was 0.002 seconds faster. He would be in the playoffs. I'm not sure he would have made the second round, but either way, yeah, what a finish, what a race. The next gen car has really this track and the next gen car have really been an ideal match. So either way, not so much of an ideal match was last week's race. If you call it that, it was much more of a chase. Everybody chasing Kyle Larson at Bristol Motor Speedway after he led 462 laps. I knew we were going to have a dominator, but yeah, we only had one dominator, Kyle Larson. What a cool picture of him and his son, though. I'm a Kyle Larson fan, so I enjoyed the race last weekend. I didn't think the racing was all that good, but either way. Optimal lineups, Kyle Larson with 197.95 points. I haven't fully gone through all of the races over the last, 12, 13 years that Draftkings has been doing NASCAR, but I don't ever remember, and fact check me if I'm wrong, but I don't ever remember another driver having close to 200 points or 197.95 points. So I think that Kyle Larson holds the record for the most DraftKings points in a race after last week. Just an absolute blowout. I think there were like 10 cars left on the lead lap. Kyle Larson at one point was ahead by 10 seconds. No tire fall off. They could have run the entire race on 2 tires or on 1 tire stop. Definitely an absolute role reversal from what we saw in the spring. NASCAR's got to figure something out. Goodyear's got to figure something out. Bristol's got to figure something out. I don't know. I have my absolute fingers crossed that they figure something out for Martinsville, because if not, Martinsville's going to be super boring too. They say they have a new and different tire for Martinsville. We'll see. I don't have a whole lot of faith that we're going to see something much different. But either way, other people who did well in the race, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, both with over 60 points. Bubba Wallace with a 58.7, finishing in third. Good for Bubba Wallace. Austin Cindric still having a phenomenal first round. Can he continue into the second round? Can he be the Cinderella? Can he be the driver that makes it to the third round and maybe even to the final 4 that was predicted to go out in the first round? Or could it also be possibly Daniel Suarez? I don't know. Or Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe. I mean, there's 3 guys that I thought, nope, no way, they're out in the first round, and 3 of those made it into the at least the round of 12. But either way, other drivers who did okay at Bristol, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Zane Smith. Good on Zane Smith for running well. We actually had that one kind of penciled in as a cheap value pick. And that probably turned out well if you had him in any of your lineups. I had him in a few. But the first round was not good for me when it came to DraftKings. I didn't get absolutely annihilated, but I did not do as well as leading up to the playoffs. So hopefully round 2 will be better, or at least DraftKings for me. Optimal lineup challenge after, it's not 32 races, that is not correct, after 29 races. Christopher Bell with 10, Tyler Reddick with 9, Kyle Larson with 9, Brad K with 8, Ty Gibbs with 7, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain, and a whole host of others with 6. So definitely still wide open in anybody's optimal lineup challenge to win, but Christopher Bell currently leads the pack by 1. All right. The numbers that don't seem to make any sense whatsoever still to this date. Practice does not seem to be correlating with doing well in DraftKings, and I'll keep putting these numbers out here just because it seems like if they show up on this page, it's almost like don't even take them. I mean, Kyle Larson wasn't even in here for practice speeds, the differential between practice speeds and qualifying. And this is for single lap. This is for 10 lap consecutive or 20 lap consecutive average is what it ended up being for Bristol because they had the extended practice. But yeah, there's no real, there's no real rhyme or reason to what they're doing in practice compared to what they're doing in a race. It seems to be much more history based and history related. So there's that. The guys that were faster in single lap practice, taking out where they qualified, seemed to be a much better indicator last week than we'd seen in the past. So maybe just straight up single lap speed might be the way to look at it, at least for Bristol. But this has not been the case for other races. So it just keeps kind of getting thrown upside down and on its head and everything else. I also thought that we were going to, they retreated the track, they cleaned the track, they did all sorts of things. So I figured, okay, yeah, maybe tire wear will become an issue. And yeah, that strategy completely failed me. So yeah, hopefully you did well last week. I did fair. I just didn't do as well as I had wanted. Bristol's one of my better tracks typically with DraftKings, and it definitely did not turn out well last week. So we are on to Kansas. Let's look at the value picks. The value picks actually ended up coming in okay. Austin Dillon ended up with finished 21st and 17th in DraftKings points. Justin Haley finished 22nd, 19th. Zane Smith finished 16th and 9th. So yeah, and I guess Zane Smith really was not very good in practice or qualifying. So I'm not sure why that was ringing a bell. Maybe it was the week prior. I don't know. This long schedule's starting to wear on my old brain. But we're getting to the end. We're getting close. But with all that being said, we are headed to Kansas this week. The best track car matchup. And we say that, and all of a sudden it's going to be a snooze fest. God, I hope not. I don't want chaos either, but I want a great strategy, tire fall off, guys having to actually race their way into the next round and get good points and just be a typical Kansas race because they have been phenomenal since the Next Gen era came out. But Kansas is an intermediate D-shaped oval track. It is 1.5 miles in length, 17 to 20 degrees of progressive banking in the corners. The race length is 267 laps. Dominator points 186.9, or pretty much 187 points, coming from laps led of 66.75 and fast laps of 120.15. We will definitely be targeting at least one, if not two, dominators for this race. Other track types to compare to, of course, would be Las Vegas, Charlotte, and Miami. Miami's not really a D-shaped. You can also put Texas in there, but Texas is completely different between 1 and 2, turns 1 and 2, and turns 3 and 4. So it kind of throws itself out. But Las Vegas and Charlotte are definitely tracks to compare to. The only problem is we only run Charlotte once in this year. It was very, very much a shortened race because of weather. Speaking of weather, weather is going to be phenomenal in Kansas weekend. It has been so far. It's going to be in the low 80s, so very comfortable for the fans. Should have a great crowd. It should be pretty comfortable for the cars. We should have some decent tire fall off. It should be a little slick. Cars should be a little loose, which always provides for very fast racing. We just hope that the aero block doesn't come in too much. And speaking of weather, one more time, thoughts and prayers to everyone from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia that have been just decimated from the hurricane this past week. The footage coming out of Tennessee, North Carolina, have just been horrific. I grew up in Southwest Virginia. My dad lives part-time in the summers in a little town called Newland, North Carolina, which is just south of Boone. They had 51 inches of rain in the last week. And good friend of my dad's that was texting with him. They don't have power. They don't have water. They don't have cell phone service. He had to go to the local hospital to get connected to their Wi-Fi. He was able to finally get out on a side by side, and got to the local hospital to get to the Wi-Fi, and sent that message out. And it's horrific. Another town, Banner Elk, is completely isolated. The two bridges getting in and out of town are both wiped out completely. So I don't have any links to the Red Cross or any of the funding, but if you have the opportunity to give a couple dollars to help out the Red Cross or any of the appropriate places to fund to help out with the relief, I know it will be much needed. I can't even imagine the full extent and the cost of this storm, along with just the human life toll, just horrific. Either way, let's get back to racing. Let's get back to better things and thoughts, but thoughts and prayers to everyone there. Optimal lineups from previous Kansas races that we can always look back on and kind of see how we need to build and look at our lineups. The spring race, we only had 3 guys that finished in the top 5. Only 1 driver that started in the top 10. From the fall race last year this time, we had 3 guys that finished in the top 5, 1 right outside the top 5. And we had Justin Hill, he finished 21st. The laps led kind of got spread out between 3 and 3. The starts were, kind of typical. I mean, the Ty Gibbs start is going to be kind of like the Chase Elliott start. It's kind of almost a plug and play for the most part. I mean, it's going to be Chase Elliott's going to be somewhere between, my guess is 50 to 60, maybe even 65% owned. So it's one of those, and I've talked about this before. You can either have him in your lineup, and if he does well, you're going to be on board with about 60 other people. If you don't have him and he does well, you're going to be on the other 40% of the line, and you're not going to probably win, because he's probably going to end up with, if he gets a top 10 finish, he's going to gain 28 spots plus the finishing spots. He's going to have 70 to 80 points just right there without even leading a lap. Which, it's going to be pretty tough for him to lead a lap starting from the rear like that. I am keeping an eye on the Alabama-Georgia game, and Alabama is trouncing Georgia 30-7 currently midway through the third quarter, but they just had a pretty cool pass that just got almost intercepted. But I will keep an eye on that. If things start to heat up over there, I'll make comments on it. Also, Clemson's routing Stanford. Lots of football on this weekend. So, along with racing, we've got it all wrapped up into one. It's enough for anybody that does DraftKings in both NASCAR and football. It's enough to make your head spin. Really good run by Georgia down to the 10-yard line. All right, they could potentially look to score here. Might make it interesting. Doubtful. But so both of the Kansas races, we had guys that kind of started close to the front. We had a couple place differentials, but the ones that are really kind of standing out, like I said, was like a Ty Gibbs, a Brad Keselowski in the spring of 2023. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Justin Haley again. So Justin Haley's showing up here a couple of times. Actually, he's 3 times. Did he make it 4? No, 3 of the 4 Justin Haley has made it into the optimal lineup. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on, especially since he just moved and flipped teams from Rick Ware to Spire, and Corey LaJoie went from Spire to Rick Ware. Not sure what that's going to do for this year, but I think it's a great move, at least for Justin Haley for next year. But once again, guys that finished in the top 5, we had 4 here, 3 here. So we're kind of seeing that we're not fully looking at necessarily somebody that's going to finish in the top 5, but right there in the top 10, maybe top 15 with some place differential. So we're looking at really kind of honing in on 2 potential dominators, 1 good finishing spot, touchdown Georgia, and 3 drivers that will end up having place differential. So that's going to kind of be the target, is 3 place differentials, 1 good finisher, and then 2 guys that will kind of swap the lead back and forth. And then we kind of see this also here in our top 15 Draftkings points and where they start the race for the last 4 races. And then we have our averages. So averaging top 10 starting spots, 5.2. 11 through 20 is 4, and 21 through 30 is 4.4. And then as we see, it's really only the guys that really are solid, kind of like Chase Elliott this weekend, that are starting 31st or worse that we need to target. So kind of looking down here, I mean, realistically, Chase Elliott is really the only one back in the 30s that we can kind of target. We do have Jimmy Johnson running this weekend, but I really think, I mean, he's even said it, he said in his interview today during practice that, he was much more doing this to kind of help his team to get some more information and to get some more information so when he was on the broadcast next week, he had more information to talk about and be more aware of what to talk about during the TV broadcast. So when we get to Jimmy Johnson, we'll kind of go over my thoughts about that. But, maybe a John Hunter Nemechek or a Todd Gillen. I think Ryan Preece, I think he might be pretty much done for this year. I think they're really having to consolidate a lot of resources around Chase Briscoe's playoff run and Kaz Grala, and I don't even have J.J. Yaley listed on here. But either way, we'll get to all the drivers in the driver-by-driver breakdown here in just a moment. In practice and qualifying, the sheet that doesn't ever really seem to matter a whole lot, but we'll kind of go through it anyways. I mean, I think the Chase Elliott play is definitely in play. Now, it's have him or don't have him. If you run multiple lineups, if you run 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 lineups, I'm probably going to be in the ballpark. I'm probably going to be even on the field. I'll probably run about half of my lineups with Chase Elliott and the other half without. If he hits, then I've got at least half of my lineups that have it. If he gets tied up in an early accident and ends up finishing 35th and doesn't have a whole lot of points, I'll still have half my lineup still be able to kind of go. If I'm running similar to a cash lineup, or I'm only running in small field tournaments, I almost kind of think you have to have Chase Elliott. If I do run some small tournaments, and like I run 3 small tournaments, I'll run in the 3 maxes, and in that I will probably have 2 lineups with Chase Elliott, 1 lineup without. I would not run 3 and 3. It's just if he ends up having any type of mistake, any pit road penalty, and he finishes 28th and started 38th, he's too expensive, and there'll be better plays on the table. But guys to potentially look at that were fast in practice and did not qualify well: Daniel Hemrick, Ross Chastain. Austin Cindric qualifying 37th. He's got to end up having a pretty good day. So that's another probably solid one to have, in the 25-30% range of ownership. They've been solid all year, and Penske has shown that they've got pretty good speed compared to the rest of the Fords. So I don't mind running the Austin Cindric play. Ty Dillon, congratulations on Ty Dillon for signing a deal with Colleague to be full-time next year in the 16 car or 10 car. Not sure which car number they're going to have. And then in the guys that practice really fast, nope, this is opposite. There's my mistake for this week. They practiced slow and qualified well, so this is supposed to be reversed. Kyle Busch, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace did not practice as well, and then went out and overqualified. And then we have our 10-lap average guys, and the differences there. Of course, Chase Elliott having an engine issue, starting dead last, so he's going to have a new engine, or at least a repaired engine, and should be okay for the race. So he's going to be in a lot of lineups. Brett Keselowski, another one who was decent in, or not, and this is just backwards, decent in practice, but missed in qualifying. Yeah, this is backwards. I don't know how I screwed that up, but either way, I always have one little screw up. All right, fastest. So this is what worked out well last week if we followed this. This is the single lap speed and fastest. Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, Carson Hocevar, Ty Gibbs, Kyle Larson, Daniel Hemrick, William Byron. Most of these guys were in the first practice session. So just remember that. The first practice session was the fastest of the practice sessions. The track was a little bit cooler. The track was not as rubbered in. And the guys that go out first typically run the fastest laps, and then they slow off. And this is why we saw Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez both have very, very good single lap speeds, but they fell off a second or even 0.65 seconds, where a lot of these other guys were not falling off that much. Ross Chastain's 10-lap average was a 31.505. Ryan Preece was only off by a tenth of a second at 31.6, where they were almost 8/10 off in single lap speed. So that kind of shows you, going out in that first practice session, getting on the track early, you can, oh my God, what a catch. Batted the ball up to himself and everything. That was crazy. All right, so the guys that are the cheapest, the value picks, where they practiced and where they are starting, and is there any major difference? Daniel Hemrick, Ty Dillon. Daniel Hemrick was 7th fastest in practice. Ty Dillon was 13th fastest in practice. If I remember correctly, they were both in the first session. And also Zane Smith was 17th in practice, which was pretty good for these guys that are sub 5,800. But Zane Smith actually backed that up with a 15th place starting spot, where Daniel Hemrick and Ty Dillon fell off on their qualifying laps. Okay, let's get into the driver-by-driver breakdown. If you have any thoughts or questions, hit me up in the chat. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And let's get into this. I'll kind of go over in more detail with Kyle Larson's page. At the top here is the five races that we are comparing to most often, which correlates down here to this line here. So this is the last 5 races here at Kansas. Sometimes when they only race once at a track, and they haven't raced the next-gen car that many times at a track, like a Pocono would be a perfect example. They only run there once a year. So you have to get more information from other tracks that they run at that are similar to a Pocono. Dover would be another one that they only race at once a year, and it's hard to have as much data, so you kind of have to pull some information from other tracks. But they run at Kansas twice a year, so this is all next-gen era information, and that correlates down here to this line. And in these 5 races, Kyle Larson has 1 win, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s. So out of all 5 of these races, he's finished in the top 10 each time. He has a 67.1 DraftKings average and a 3.4 average finish. Then we have, of course, Kyle Larson and his price on DraftKings. He is expensive this week at $11,500. Not surprising at all, coming off of his dominating win last week, and he finished first in this race in the spring. What happened to my Clemson game? Did the Clemson game end? I did have Clemson on there. I had some bets on the Clemson game. I wanted to see how that turned out. Either way, I'll check that when we get done here. Let me see. Clemson. Yeah, it still says it's going on, but my quarterback got enough. LSU's quarterback got enough. Ohio State's quarterback got enough. Ooh, I need Howard. Oh, that was the receiver. I need the Ohio State guy to get 8 more yards. I need Clemson to get a few more receiving yards. I don't know why they switched it on my TV. Oh well. Sorry about that. I always like to check my bets as we're going. Back to racing. In practice, so then Kyle Larson went out and qualified 11th, but in practice he was in the second group. So this number 2 in the parentheses here means he was in the second practice session. He was 6th in single lap. He did a total of 25 laps of practice, and for a 10-lap average consecutive run, he was 8th in speed. Then we have his last race at this track, which was the spring of 2024, a couple months ago, 6 or 7 months ago. He finished first. And then his full race history in the Cup Series at Kansas Motor Speedway has 20 total starts, 2 wins, 9 top 5s, 12 top 10s, 16 out of the 20 top 20s, and 11.0 average finish. Then down here are his win stickers for this year. He currently has 5 win stickers, 1 in the playoffs, but since we're in a new round, that does not advance him to the next round, so that gets put here. He is plus 39 points to the cut line. So believe him in the top 8. So he is plus 39 to 8th or 9th place. And this signifies that he's in the playoffs. So that's all the information. Oh, in this top right corner over here is the rank. I did not have a chance to do my usages yet, so I don't have I could probably tell you I'm probably going to run somewhere between 30 and 40% usage on Kyle Larson. Probably closer to the 40%. I do like Kyle Larson. He does have some place differential upside, and his average finishes are phenomenal at Kansas. Either he's going to finish top 3 or he's going to finish 34th. Just the way Kyle Larson races. It's either everything or nothing. So I have a number 2 on his ranking. This number 2 in ranking comes from past history, trend. So the last 10 races that they've run, last 10 similar style tracks. So when I look at Kansas, Vegas, Homestead, we even put Darlington in there. Any of the kind of higher banked, larger 1.5 cookie cutter style tracks. That's what gets put into this mix. Practice and then qualifying, and the qualifying is much more how much of a place differential do they have. James, hey Mark, hope you're doing well. Yes, Bowman worked out last week. Yeah, I saw that. Looking forward to your advice. All right, give me your drivers. I think we talked about, who did we talk about keeping for this week? Was it Byron? Can't remember. I know you took Bowman last week, and I like that call. I think we're holding Byron for Martinsville. So if anybody's wondering, James is in a Survivor League, and I gave him some advice last week. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Bubba Wallace we were going to hold on to for this week. Bubba Wallace is still a good play for this week. He actually practiced and qualified pretty well. I might be a little on the older side, and yeah, I try to remember things pretty well. My wife would probably argue with that fact, but all right. Next in line, Denny Hamlin at $11,000. I mean, honestly, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are the two class of the fields for this track. As you can see, Denny Hamlin starting in 8th. He was 16th in single lap, 7th in 10-lap consecutive average. So pretty good there. He was in practice session 1. Denny Hamlin always seems to practice a little bit slow. They're really trying to fine-tune a much longer run speed car. They know how to make a car fast. And that's why he ends up qualifying typically decently most of the time. But what they're really trying to do is really get a really good clue into what their long run speed's going to look like and how they're going to race in and around traffic. So, but as we look at the last 5 races here at Kansas for Denny Hamlin, he's got 1 win, 5 top 5s, and both the 5 top 5s gives you top 10s and top 20s, a 73.7 Draftkings average, and a 2.8 average finish. He finished 5th here in the spring race earlier this year. 32 total starts here at Kansas. 4 wins, 14 top 5s, 15 top 10s, and 27 out of 32 times he's finished in the top 20 for an 11.8 average finish. I mean, he's an 11.8, and I think Kyle Larson was an 11.0. So really good. He is 3rd on my ranking sheet. And if you're wondering who's number 1 in the ranking sheet, that would be Chase Elliott. Just too much place differential and too much upside for Chase Elliott. But Tyler Reddick is also really good here. And the 45 car, just as a hint, the 45 car has, I think, won this race in each of the fall races of the next gen era. So 2022, Bubba Wallace won it in the 45. Last year, Tyler Reddick won it in the 45. And I think actually in 2021, Kurt Busch won it in the 45. So I think it's 3 races that the 45 car has won this race in the fall. So just as a caveat, doesn't mean anything really, unless you're like superstitious. But Tyler Reddick, 10,500, starting in 4th. He did a little bit better in qualifying than he did in practice. 14th in single lap, 28th in 10-lap consecutive average. 1 win here in the last 5 races with 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 3 top 20s, a 19th place average finish. He finished 20th here in the spring. 10 total starts with a 17.1 average finish. I don't mind the Tyler Reddick play. He comes in ranked 7th on my sheet. It's going to be one of those, and it's really hard to tell with Tyler Reddick unless he just goes out and blisters his speed in practice and qualifying. And he did not do that this week, so it's kind of a little bit hard to get a gauge really where Tyler Reddick is, but I do like his starting spot. Typically when Tyler Reddick starts kind of up in the top 5 or top 10, he's usually able to hold serve. So I don't mind running some Tyler Reddick this week. In fact, I think some people may fade off of him because he's starting a little too far up and his practice speeds were not great. I'm not that scared of running some Tyler Reddick. Christopher Bell, next in line here at 10,300. Pole position. But Christopher Bell's known for grabbing the pole positions at these 1.5 and larger tracks. Christopher Bell's also one that he and Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson all love to what they call rip the fence or ride the wall. It is running literally 6 inches to a foot off of the wall. You're able to carry a ton of speed off a corner exit and down both of the straightaways, which gives you really good long run speed. It's also more banked up there, which typically you can get a little bit better tire wear, and you kind of almost have an air cushion next to the wall. So even if you do happen to scrape it a little bit, it scrapes a little bit of paint, but really does no damage. So these guys love to rip the fence and are really good at it. So keep an eye on Christopher Bell. I mean, all 4 of these guys that are starting that we've talked about all are really good at ripping the fence. Denny Hamlin's not as known for it as Tyler Reddick or Kyle Larson, but Bell and Hamlin are both good at it. Bell was pretty good in practice, 12th in single lap, 6th in 10 lap. He did do 35 laps of practice, which was a good amount for the 20-minute practice session that they had. In the last 5 races, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 11.6 average finish. I like all these things. For some reason, he came in 16th in my ranking sheet, and I could not figure out why that was coming in that way, other than maybe because he's starting from the pole. But I'm not fully scared of taking Christopher Bell starting in the pole. I think he has a really good shot at getting out front to start this race and leading a good chunk, if not most, of stage 1. So unless we get something really weird that starts to happen with, I see your thing just popped up there. I'll get with you in just 1 second, James. I'm not that worried about taking Christopher Bell from the pole. Playoff driver, he's got a pretty good average finish here. I mean, even if he can go out and lead a lot of the first stage and get, 80 laps led, and even if he falls to like 3rd or 4th, that's still going to probably be close to optimal lineup. All right, James, what do we got here? Big list. In qualifying order, you've got Byron, Cindric, Suarez, Bowman still, Briscoe, Burton, Watermelon Man, Busher, Bubba, Busch. All right. I'm still going to say save Byron for Martinsville, so don't use him yet. Hold on to potentially Cindric at Talladega. Suarez makes me a little bit nervous. Briscoe, I think Briscoe's might have a little bit of birthday or baby being born brain going on. I don't know how fully he's going to be able to stay focused. His wife is, I mean, with twins, like she may go on labor tonight, so he may not even be there tomorrow. So be a little careful with the Briscoe play. Kyle Busch would be interesting. Hocevar's interesting. Don't love it. McDowell, no. Todd G, no. Josh Berry, no. Noah, no. Priest, no. Ricky Stenhouse, no. Hemrick, no. Eric, no. Corey, no. Haley, not for Survivor. I don't mind him for DraftKings. Jimmy, no. I think probably the play is Bubba. And if you don't feel comfortable with Bubba, I think Bowman is not a bad choice. We said we were going to possibly play Bowman somewhere, but I can't remember where. Who would you play at Homestead? That's probably the more interesting question. At Homestead, trying to think ahead for you so we don't burn somebody. We ran Bowman last week, so you're down to 1 use on him. Byron, you're down to 1 use on him. Cindric, you can use at Talladega. You could also use Bubba at Talladega. I mean, honestly, Hocevar may not be an awful pick. Because I'm trying to think where Hocevar may fit in the next couple of rounds. We still have Vegas, which makes it kind of interesting. But Kyle Busch could be good at Vegas. I'm still leaning taking Bubba for tomorrow. If that's me. If I'm looking just kind of, and that's almost kind of like a cash play. You're just looking for somebody who has good upside with it's probably not overly risky, and I think Bubba kind of falls into that. But either way, Christopher Bell, I don't mind him starting from the pole. I don't think you've got any Bell left. I don't see Bell. See Bell. But I'm not sure why he came in ranked 16th other than his starting position, but I don't mind him. Chase Elliott, we've talked a lot about already. He was decent in practice, so his car is set up and handling well. So it was just the horsepower behind it, and they qualified last. They're good. They're going to completely redo the engine or put a new engine in or whatnot. So I'm not overly concerned or worried about the Chase Elliott play starting in 38th or having issues in handling. 15th in single lap, 4th in 10 lap consecutive average. His average finish is 11.2, finished third here in the spring. Love the Chase Elliott play, but buyer beware, he will be extremely heavily owned. We talked about that multiple times. Ryan Blaney, 9,800, starting in 7th. His single lap speed was not great, but he was in the second grouping, so take that for what it's worth. I mean, Kyle Larson was really the only one that was even remotely close in single lap speed in the first session. Ryan Blaney starting in 7th. I mean, his average finish here is 12.2. He does not have a top 5 in the next-gen era car here at Kansas and only one top 10, but he has a pretty good average of 5 top 20s and a 12.2 average finish. On the fence with the Ryan Blaney play. Don't love it, don't hate it. Ryan Blaney has a tendency... The Fords don't typically do super well at Kansas for some reason, and I don't 100% know why, because they'll perform well at Charlotte. They'll perform decently well at Texas. They don't seem to do well in the next-gen era. Now, Joe Logano won last year. I understand. But I don't love the Ryan Blaney, don't hate the Ryan Blaney play. I will probably be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15% ownership with Ryan, just in case he happens to do well. And I'll probably pair him up with other Fords. And if the Fords just happen to hit on something throughout the race and end up finishing well, they're all going to finish well. That's typically how it happens. That's why the Joe Gibbs and 2311 cars all end up finishing pretty well together, or all of the Henry guys finish well together. They just, when they figure it out, they tell the rest of their team. As we get further in the playoffs, that starts to fade off a little bit. But I do want to check to see. Nope. Man, I missed that one by 8 yards. Either way, it was close. What's this other one look like? Sorry. Yeah, I should just stick to NASCAR. I don't do as well. Now I do pretty well when NFL comes around. I've got a secret weapon. One of the loyal followers here until that NFL starts. Matt helps me out with some good picks. So I ended up getting a second place finish in a tournament last week with his help. So thank you, Matt, for your help. William Byron, $9,700, starting in 6th. I definitely like the William Byron play. He was 8th in single lap, 1st in 10 lap consecutive average. Got a 12.6 average finish, which isn't awful, not great, about the same as Blaney. But he was decent in practice. Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning a little bit more for William Byron than I am for Blaney. Blaney seemed to be the only fast Ford in the group, along with Logano. The rest of the Fords really kind of seem to struggle in practice and qualifying. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be awful in the race, but there is a little tendency here for past history. And really the only Ford drivers that do well here would be Blaney and Logano, historically. But I don't mind the William Byron play here. He was very fast in the long run speed. He's starting up front. I expect him kind of to start and finish probably somewhere in this top 10 range. Martin Truex Jr. I like the Martin Truex Jr. play this week. I think he finally makes a rebound. I think he finally gets the evil mojo that is happening with him gone. I'm not calling him to win the race by any means, but I think we get a nice solid top 12 or top 10 finish. This track lines up really well for Martin. And he's starting in 19th. So he's got 11.8 average finish over the last 5 races, 4 times in the top 10, 2 times in the top 5. He finished 4th here in the spring race. One of his better finishes out of the year. I definitely like the Martin Truex Jr. play this week. Nice, congrats. Yeah, Matt helped me out a lot. Matt on Monday, though, holy smokes. Matt had a huge NFL hit on Monday night. I'm not going to say much more than that, but it wasn't like the Millie Maker, but it was a big, big hit. I think he won New Hampshire, Illinois. I can't remember. I wish I had Bell. I took him at New Hampshire. Yeah, and Illinois. Oh, you're talking about Gateway for the Illinois 400 or whatever it was. It's funny because they call it Gateway, and the track's actually in Illinois, but everybody thinks it's the St. Louis. But Martin Truex Jr. finished fourth. I like the Martin Truex Jr. play. He comes ranked fifth. The Toyotas are historically really, really good at Kansas, and I think there's a lot of room to run here for Martin. Pretty good ceiling. Joey Logano starting in fifth. Like I said, it's Logano and Blaney are both pretty good here. Did you say you had a Blaney left to play? Be surprised if you had a Blaney left to play. No, you don't have any Blaney's left. I would say take Blaney, but you don't have that, James. Logano 9,300 starting in fifth. You don't have any Joey either, do you? Even though I don't love the Logano play, so I still think I think the Bubba play might be the play this week for you. Joe Logano 9,300 starting in fifth, 20th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap consecutive average. Oh, there's a mess up. It's supposed to be 10, not 20. 15.8 average finish. God, has it been that long since Joey Logano? I guess it was last gen era car. It was the first race of the 2021 playoffs, I guess, where he was able to hold Kevin Harvick off with aero blocking for like 30 laps. It was unreal. It was the first time that you really saw what aero blocking would do, because Kansas is such a dominant high groove track. But yeah, he's got 4 wins here, but doesn't have any wins in the next gen era. Touchdown Georgia. All right. They're going to make it interesting. 22-33. They're only down by 11. All right. We might have a ball game on our hands. That's still a lot of points. And he finished 34th here in the spring. So I don't love the Joey Logano play. I like the Blaney play much more than I like the Joey Logano play, and I don't love either one. So Ty Gibbs. This could be interesting. Ty Gibbs, practice and qualifying, was probably the best on the board. Second in qualifying, he was 5th in single lap, 5th in 10 laps. So he was able to maintain his speed over a long run, and he's starting outside pole. I think Christopher Bell is fast enough to get out in front of Ty Gibbs to start the race. But with Ty Gibbs being this quick, Ty Gibbs may be able to track him down. Now, Ty Gibbs is probably going to play pretty nice with his teammate, because his teammate's in the playoffs and Ty Gibbs is not in the playoffs. But if Bell slips at all, Gibbs is going to pounce. I'm not overly concerned about his average finishes here. James says, it might be a goofy question, but wouldn't Bubba possibly let Denny pass him to let him win if it came down to that? Not trying to be a conspiracy. Interesting thought and idea, but absolutely not. I think Denny Hamlin would probably fire Bubba Wallace if he did that. There is a strict understanding that once Denny Hamlin is behind the wheel of his car, he is a Joe Gibbs driver. He is not an owner. He is a competitor. And Denny Hamlin has said the same thing, that he doesn't care if it's Tyler Reddick and it's for the championship. If Denny Hamlin has a chance to win, Denny Hamlin's going to win. Now, for a championship, it's probably a little different, but now Denny Hamlin has been adamant about that, and Bubba and Tyler have both been pretty adamant in the past that I took Denny Hamlin as a Joe Gibbs driver. He was not my boss. He was not any of that. They've raced each other hard lots of times. They've almost wrecked each other lots of times. Yeah, I mean, I will say that about Denny Hamlin. if he can speak on a subject, Denny Hamlin is probably one of the most brutally honest NASCAR people out there. It gets him in trouble a lot, but he is brutally honest. If he can answer the question, a lot of times he can't answer questions about charters and crap like that, just because there's too much legalese behind it. But as far as it comes to other stuff, Denny Hamlin's brutally honest, even with himself. I mean, he'll call himself out as fast as anybody else. What's up, Wyatt? We're rostering Denny and Larson in every lineup or what? I mean, you probably want to put a little Chase Elliott in there too, Wyatt. And once you put all three of those in there, you spend a lot of money. Not even sure what that looks like on the expenditure, but I mean, what's Chase Elliott? 10,000, 11,000. So we're at 21, 20, 32. So yeah, you have less than like $18,000 to spend on the rest of the drivers. I think the sports needs guys like that. I still like Kyle F. Busch. Yeah, I mean, and Kyle still calls it the way it is. He's a little more subtle lately. Where were we? We're talking about Ty. Did we talk about Bubba yet? I don't think we talked about Bubba. I think we stopped at Ty. Yeah. I mean, Kyle still calls it like it is. I mean, and if he done, Samantha will. Holy smokes, Samantha lit the Twitter or X on fire last week with her comments about Bristol and the next gen car. Ooh wee. Yeah, that's to say the least. The two of them are match made in heaven. God, could you imagine being around the dinner table or around the bar at their house late at night? It would be quite an interesting conversation with the two of them. Ty Gibbs, I like the Ty Gibbs play. He's the most consistent in practice. Bubba Wallace, $9,000 starting in 13th. $9,000. I like the Bubba Wallace play. He is typically very good here. He does have one win here in the next gen era, a 12.8 average finish. He finished 17th in the fall. Starting in 13th, we've got a little bit of place differential. The 2311 cars and the Toyota cars or the Joe Gibbs cars are really good here. Legacy does not seem to be very good here. But I like the Bubba Wallace play a lot. Kyle Busch, 8,800. And like I was saying, James, I think you save Kyle Busch for Vegas. Because he's starting in third, which is nice that he's starting up front. But he's 33rd in single lap and 17th in 10 lap. Now, he was in the second set of practices. I get that. But to be that slow makes it a little concerning. And then for them to bump the air pressures that much up and get him to third has me a little concerned, especially for Draftkings. I think Kyle Busch could probably finish, 7th, 8th, 9th. I mean, he might even be able to finish a third. So, yeah, I think you got to flip a coin, James. Either I think it's a Kyle Busch move or it's a Bubba Wallace play. And you've got both of them available. Wyatt says, lots of Zane Smith and Hemrick this week. I mean, Zane Smith is not out of play. Hemrick probably is a little bit out of play. Kyle makes me so nervous. Yeah. James says, Kyle makes me nervous this year. I love him, but my God, so disappointing. Yeah, it's been a tough one. Andrew, what's up, buddy? Pricing is really bumped up this week. Going to be hard to make good lineups. No, I think there's room. There's some cheaper guys. I mean, and we're kind of making fun of a couple of them, but I mean, I think Carson Hocevar's in play. I think Zane Smith is in play. I don't think Hemrick's in play. He kind of qualified a little too much, but Zane Smith, I mean, and Hemrick are both looking for rides next year. With Ty Dillon signing a contract with Colleague, that really put a knife into Hemrick. I mean, you want to talk about a potential stellar lineup in the Xfinity Series for Dale Jr. You literally have Zane Smith that could be a free agent. You've got Daniel Hemrick, that could be a free agent. They're already going to run Justin, who, God, Justin Allgaier and Kyle Larson might be the same person. It's either they win races or they wreck cars. It's almost hysterical. But okay, so you have in the Joe Gibbs stable Connor Zelich that's coming over. You've got Justin Allgaier that's there. You've got a Zane Smith that doesn't have a ride for next year. And you probably have a Hemrick that doesn't have a ride for next year. You want to talk about that's a banger of a 4-team lineup for Joe Gibbs Racing or for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series next year, if that were to happen. Do you give your opinion or thought on the LaJoie Haley trade already? No, I have not given that opinion yet. We're coming up to Haley and LaJoie. If you did, I'll go back. No, I have not given it yet. I definitely have. Well, I mean, I guess I briefly talked about the LaJoie Haley. But once we get to Haley, he's coming up here in just a second. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I like the call though. Chris Buescher, 8,500, starting 25th. God, he was not good in practice. He was in the second practice session, so take that for what it's worth. But he did finish second here in the spring race, and almost won the thing. Lost it by 0.001. And it may be even close to that. That's just where the stopwatch stopped. But this car is... RFK is not, in my opinion, in the same boat they were in the spring. I think Chris Buescher ends up probably finishing fairly well, so I think he's in play because he's got some room to run. But I think kind of the ceiling on it is probably a top 10. So I don't mind the Chris Buescher play at all. I mean, Brad Keselowski, same thing. He was 26th in single lap, 9th and 10 lap. He finished 11th in the spring, and of course, his teammate finished second. Starting in 26, they're starting side by side. So I don't mind the Brad Keselowski play. I think if I had to choose between the two, I'd like the Chase Briscoe or the Chris Buescher play more than I like the Brad Keselowski play, but I don't mind either one of them. Chase Briscoe scares the bejesus out of me starting in 9th, but his practice speeds were 31st and 33rd, and he's got baby brain. I mean, yeah, we talked about that earlier. His wife is about ready to pop with twins. It could happen tonight, and if that does, he hops on the Joe Gibbs plane and flies. I don't know if, or maybe he starts the race and they swap him out with somebody. I don't know. Man, that's got to be a tough call. You're in the top 12 in points, and your wife's going to give birth to twins. I feel bad for Chase Briscoe either way. He said if he gets in the race and the race starts, that he doesn't want to know if it's happening until after the race, and they can just make sure that they've got preparations to helicopter him out into the airport as soon as the race is over. And they've got all that lined up. And Joe Gibbs, his boss for next year, will have a jet waiting on the tarmac for him, which I thought was really cool. That's a Joe Gibbs move. He's that type of guy. And Hendrick's the same way. The both of them are both super unselfish. Alex Bowman, $8,000. This is another play that I really, really like. Do you take Bowman 2 weeks in a row, James? I mean, the Bowman play's not bad. Back up here and look again. What else did you have? You had Bubba, Busch, Bowman, Byron, Cindric. I think he said this, like I said. I think he could flip a coin between Bowman and Bubba. The problem is I don't know where else you would run Bubba. And Bowman, you might be able to run at Homestead. Let's look at that real quick. Hold on one second. Let's go here. And if nobody's ever used this before, this is a great reference. It's a racing reference. Bowman. Go here. Go to Alex. His name. Then you can pick a series, but since he does the Next Gen Cup Series and you only want the results by track, we get the data. And then we can come down. What did we say? Miami Homestead? Homestead. We can look at all of his finishes at Homestead. He finishes, so this is starting in 2014, 33rd, 26th, 16th, 29th, 9th. Nope, he's not that good at Homestead. That's kind of a tough call, tough play. So that's kind of how I go back and look at things. HMS looks good. Yeah, they do. I wouldn't use Bubba. Then I wouldn't necessarily lose sleep. Yeah, I mean, Bubba's a tough call. But out of all of the tracks, Kansas is probably next to Talladega or the super speedways is probably his best track. Holy smokes, Georgia's on the 1 yard line and down by 12 with 6 minutes left. We got a ball game, folks. I don't want to drag anybody away from my stream, but yeah, make sure you put the Georgia if you like college football. Check out the Georgia-Alabama game. It's starting to get tightened up a little bit, but it is number 2 versus number 4 team. It should be tight. Alex Bowman, yeah, yeah. I like the Bowman play this week here. That's the whole thing is I don't know where else you would use Bubba, or where else you would use Bubba. The bees, Bowman. You can use him at Martinsville potentially. What else do we have? You're not going to... you have SVG left, right? Either that or AJ you could use at the road course. You could still use Byron at the road course if you really wanted to. But where would you use Bubba? Either here, Vegas, or Talladega? Where would you use Cindric? Either potentially the road course or Talladega. And then getting to... You don't have any Bell left, right? I'm trying to think who you use in Phoenix. Oh, maybe use Ross in Phoenix. He won there last year. I don't know. I think your choices are Bubba, Bowman, Busch. One of the 3 Bs. Used SVG at Chicago. The Chicago one kind of burned you, but the Watkins Glen was probably pretty good. Ross Chastain next in line here at 7. Oh, back to I like the Alex Bowman play for DraftKings, and I don't mind him for James and his other thing. I think he fits as well here as he does at any of the other tracks left to run. If that helps. I know I'm probably making it more confusing. I'm probably making it more confusing than it's worth, but I think Busch, Bowman, or Bubba I'd use for tomorrow. I'll let you choose. That way, I'm not the guinea pig. Kidding. You can blame it on me all you want. I'm used to it. Ross Chastain, $7,800, who was super fast in single lap and then fell off the cliff to 26th in the 10 lap, and then qualified in 20th. Yeah, he was one of the first cars on the track, and clean track, clean air, fresh pavement, was blistering fast. And then, he maintained fairly well, but he ended up falling to 26th in the 10 lap run, and then qualified 20th. He's definitely got room to run here. He's 10.2 average finish, finished 19th in the spring, touchdown Georgia. We've got a ball game, folks. Yeah. I'll have a little bit of ownership in Ross Chastain. Don't love it, don't hate it. He came in 5th on my ranking system. He runs pretty well here. Austin Cindric, starting in 17th. He's not good at this track. But he has surprised everyone so far this year and had a phenomenal last 3 races. Now they also all fell right into his wheelhouse, kind of. He's really good at Atlanta and / super speedways. He's pretty good at road courses, and then at that point he had enough point cushion that all he had to do was just maintain and run Bristol really well and not get in a whole bunch of mess. And he did that just perfectly fine, and he's now in the next round. For him to improve on this next round, I think this is kind of the track where he just needs to end up having a good finish. He needs to finish, he doesn't need a great finish. He needs to kind of finish where he starts. And that's kind of where I see Austin Cindric being. And I don't know if it's $7,500 is that's what I want. I mean, he's only got 2 top 20s. He's never finished in the top 10. And his average finish is 24.4. So I do not like the Austin Cindric play for DraftKings or for James Hunt. All right. Daniel Suarez, another one who made it quite well through the first round. And, I mean, other than Talladega, this round does not set up well for Daniel Suarez. So it's been nice having Daniel Suarez in the playoffs, but I think his time might be up. Now, he was pretty good in practice, and he qualified pretty well. So we'll see what Daniel does tomorrow. He makes me a little bit nervous for DraftKings. But it'll be interesting to watch Daniel Suarez tomorrow. I don't think that he ends up having a decent race. I think he finishes 23rd, 24th, 25th. And starting in 10th, that doesn't work in my world. So I will probably not have a whole lot of ownership in Daniel Suarez. But I can see the intrigue in it. And now we're getting into, other than Chase Briscoe, we're now starting to get into the realm of, we have a team that is shutting its doors in 7 or 6 weeks, and they've already started swapping out crew members and parts and pieces and everything else just to get Chase Briscoe across the finish line. And Noah Gragson is not part of that lineup. Noah Gregson's got a ride for next year. They've literally mailed it home. Oh my God, he fumbled the kickoff on the 2-yard line. Held on it. Oh, wow. This gets real interesting. But Noah Gragson, 7,200 starting at 24th. I think that's about where Noah Gregson's going to finish. He potentially can get himself up to, a top 20, but I'm not sure he gets past the top 15 unless we just have huge amounts of carnage, which typically doesn't happen in Kansas. We get some carnage, and we get some bent sheet metal, but I think they're mailing it in right now. And they're just trying to get this through the end of the year. So I don't love the Noah Gragson play. Michael McDowell at $7,000. Let's look at this. He's starting 21st. He practiced 22nd in single laps. He was 23rd in 10-lap consecutive average. He's got a 20.2 average finish and a 27.9 average finish overall. Where do we think Michael McDowell is going to finish? Probably 21st, right where he starts. Now, he finished 10th in the spring, so I'll give him credit for that. But I think this is a 20th place finish kind of racetrack for Michael McDowell. He's really good at super speedways, and he's really good on road courses. His bread and butter is not on the 1.5-mile cookie cutters. James says, do you ever find it difficult handicapping Buescher and Brad or deciding which one to take? So many times I feel like they're similar priced and kind of the same play. Oh, yeah. They are very, very similar. There are certain tracks that I think Brad is better at. This style track, I think Buescher is better. I think the shorter than 1.5 miles. So you get to the Darlingtons, the Dovers, the Richmonds. I think Brad typically is better. Super speedways, I think Brad is better. But the 1.5 miles, I would put much more in the Buescher camp. That in Michigan, we used to run an auto club. He ran well there. So that's where kind of I lean when I'm looking at him. But no, it's very hard to handicap them. They are very, very similar. They're driving both RFK cars. The cars are set up almost identical. And we continue on with the Stewart-Haas cars. Josh Berry. I I mean, I don't think we see anything in the top 20 world for any of these guys. And I'm not sure a top 20 for Josh Berry gets it done for Draftkings, much less anything else. He's got a ride for next year. They're mailing it in, so I don't have a whole lot of interest in Josh Berry. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. This is an interesting play. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting in 18th. He was 10th in single lap. Now was in the first grouping. I understand, but he still maintained to 18th and qualified 18th. And he's got a 17.8 average finish, and he finished 16th in the spring. I mean, he's got 24 total starts here than 19.2. Now, it's going to be tough for him to get a top 10. He's only had one of those his entire career at Kansas. So I think this is kind of a finish where you start, but at 6,700, finishing where you start in the teens is not awful. It could easily put you close to the top 15 in points, is what I'm saying. Don't love the play, don't hate the play. I'll probably have maybe 10, 15% ownership in Ricky Stenhouse. He's going to fall in the same park for me as a Zane Smith. Carson Hocevar. I mean, I tell you what, this kid is just lighting it up. He is going to be a force to be reckoned with next year and the years beyond. 6,600. The question is, who gets their first win first? Ty Gibbs or Carson Hocevar? I'm almost guessing at this point Carson Hocevar gets a win before Ty Gibbs does. $6,600 starting in 14th. He was 14th in single lap, 3rd in 10 lap. Yeah, and James, I would hold on to your Carson Hocevar play. Oh my gosh. Did Georgia really just take the lead? No way. I just looked up and I saw the guy catching the ball, and I don't think, no, they just took the lead. Oh my gosh, what a meltdown by Alabama. This is a worse meltdown than Virginia Tech's meltdown. Good Lord. Wow. 60s. Carson Hocevar, 60. I like I said, I like the Carson Hocevar play. I might have a decent amount of ownership in Carson. I mean, decent being 10 to 15%. But they're going for 2, which would put them up by 3, which would tie would ensue. Oh my God, this thing is going to go to overtime. Which one finishes first, this stream or the Clemson or the Alabama Georgia game? Nope, he was short. Good try though. I like the Carson Hocevar play, even starting in 14th. I think he's could easily be a top 10. Maybe, I don't think he gets to top 5. I think it's more like a 7th or 8th place finish for Carson Hocevar this week. And I think we're coming real close to getting to the Justin Haley trade talk. Austin Dillon, 6,500, starting 22nd. I think this is about where he finishes. Miley Virus. Nice name. Been lurking, but this is a great show. It's cool. You interact with your chat. Holy mackerel, you know your NASCAR. You are on a podcast. No, I'm not. But yeah, I've been some of the guys that have been around for a long time know. I mean, I've been watching and interacting with NASCAR for, I don't know, 30 plus years. I've been doing DraftKings for as long as DraftKings started doing it. I live in the Richmond area, so I get to go to all the Richmond races. I've been to 64 races at Martinsville. I've been to probably 12 races at Bristol. Yeah, I've been around NASCAR for a long time. I've seen races at Rockingham. If that tells you how long I've been going and watching races. I do a fair amount of iRacing. I race. I don't broadcast anymore. Maybe I can get back into that at some point. But I do Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and sometimes Sunday nights in leagues. And they're all NASCAR oval-based racing. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time in the NASCAR world. Oh, he caught the ball. Oh, yeah, I think he stepped out of bounds. If he didn't, he is gone. Touchdown, Bama, if he didn't step out of bounds. Holy moly. Wow. That was a quick strike. Thank you, Miley. I appreciate that. I think I just saw that you subscribed. Oh, wow. I thought he stepped out of bounds. I'd love to see a replay of that. Maybe he didn't. Austin Dillon, look, focus. Squirrel, focus. Starting 22nd. I think this is about where Austin Dillon finishes, to be honest. So, does he play? Yeah, potentially. All right, Justin Haley. What are my thoughts about the Justin Haley trade? I think it's good for both parties, to be perfectly honest. Justin Haley needed more support. Justin Haley, I think, has been stuck behind. Oh, and he got the 2-point conversion. I think he helped Rick Ware out tremendously this past year. I think he was at Colleague and he was the third wheel at Colleague. Their Xfinity series was what mattered the most to him. And then he had AJ that he was playing second fiddle to. I think AJ helped Justin Haley's road course racing out a ton. So when he went to Rick Ware, he looked like a hero. And because of this next-gen car being so similar, that Justin Haley was able to make huge strides for Rick Ware and put them back on the map. I think being at Spire, with Spire being part of kind of a Hendrick sister company, Spire has got a ton of money from Gainbridge. When I mean a ton, I mean multi-millions of dollars. They are now a Chevy partnered team. I think Justin Haley, we are going to see this new evolution of Justin Haley, Carson Hocevar. This team's going to rock it. They are going to be something to be reckoned with in 3 to 5 years, if not sooner. So I think the play for Justin Haley and for Spire was phenomenal. I also think it was really, really good for Carson Hocevar, or for Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie likes to play the underdog role. He fits well there. He is great for NASCAR Cup Series. His podcast is immensely popular. He's an immensely popular driver. And he always seems to find a way to have 2, 3, 4 races a year that he does well at. And that's enough for him. He's able to sell sponsorship. He's able to do all those things. I think the move was phenomenal for both parties. I don't think Corey LaJoie was going to fit in the long-term plans for Spire. So, I did. High-quality NASCAR content is always hard to find. Well, thank you. I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into the spreadsheets, the data, the information. And the other thing is, I call it like I see it. And if it's data-driven, I don't tell you it's an opinion. I just tell you the facts. If it's an opinion, and I have opinions, a lot of them, especially when it comes to NASCAR and DraftKings. I think Justin Haley's going to be, I don't know if I play him this week. He could be a surprise, so I don't mind having a little bit of interest in Justin Haley this week. But I also think that there is a potential because you've got a new crew, you've got a new crew chief. There's lots of moving pieces behind the scenes with Justin Haley in this switch. Can they overcome and shock the world? Absolutely. I think it's going to be more of a, hey, let's get to know each other, first date type jitters going on with Justin Haley and Spire this week. So I don't know if I would want to have a whole lot of ownership in Justin Haley. Same thing at the Corey LaJoie side. They could surprise, but I think more apt. Justin Haley's probably just going to be like, okay, let me go get a good finish. Let me learn my crew chief. Let me learn my crew. Let's learn these setups. I mean, they're both driving Chevys, so there's not a huge difference in at least the manufacturer, but the way things are run are going to be completely different from Rick Ware to Spire. So, all in all, I love the Justin Haley trade for both parties. Eric Jones next in the line here at 6,300, starting in 16th. He was 9th in single lap, 25th in 10 lap consecutive average. He was 21.3 average finish here at Kansas. this race races a lot like Darlington and a lot like Miami. They rip the top. The tire wear is fairly significant. Eric Jones does really well at both of those tracks. I don't know. I think Eric Jones's talent is much better than the equipment that's underneath him. So I think there's going to be a little bit of struggle this weekend for Eric Jones to get much better than 16th. Possibly get up to 11th, 10th, something along those lines. But I think that's kind of a stretch. I think it's when we look at the rest of the legacy cars, I think they all finish high teens, low 20s at best. Jimmy Johnson's already said that all he's doing is just going out and getting laps and getting information that he can hopefully pass on to the team for next year. So for Jimmy Johnson to do even remotely well, we would need a high attrition type of race. Ryan Preece, they are running on parts and pieces at this point. He's starting in 37th. His practice speeds was 35th and 30th in 10-lap consecutive average. He's not great at the mile-and-a-half cookie cutter style tracks anyways. Like I said, they're running on fumes at this point at Stewart-Haas, and whatever gas they've got left, they're dumping it all into the Chase Briscoe tank. So I don't expect a whole lot from Ryan Preece other than the fact he is starting in 37th, and all you got to do is follow Chase Elliott through the field. That's going to be a little hard to do, but I can see taking some ownership in Ryan Preece starting in 37th. Even in their worst days, they're not a 37th car. They're a 28th to 30th place car. So, is that enough at 6,100? Maybe. Todd Gillen at $6,000 starting in 33rd. He was 36th in single lap. They did 20 laps. I don't know why they didn't do more laps, and I caught up to practice a little bit late, and I hate that it's on the NBC Sports Network app or website. It's nice they don't have commercials; they run it straight through, but I don't know. I'm an old soul. I just like to have my stuff in one spot, and it's just bouncing everywhere at this point to find coverage. But either way, $6,000 starting 33rd. There's definitely room to grow. His average finish is 22.2. He's got 5 starts. Is 21st enough at $6,000? Maybe. I think he could potentially get maybe into the teens. That's a big maybe though. So I don't know. I don't love the Todd Gillen play. We already talked about Jimmy Johnson enough. He's starting in 35th. His practice speed 37th. He finished 38th here in the spring. I just don't have any interest in Jimmy Johnson this week. Corey LaJoie starting in 27th. I for the same reason, I'll probably stay a little bit away from Justin Haley. I'll probably stay away from Corey LaJoie this week. Yeah, you could take some ownership in either one of these, but you're really kind of just hoping on a narrative, and that's tough. That becomes like me having an opinion. Sorry, I'm passing the ball. You need some Corey? You could take Corey. It's not. He was 25th in single lap, 19th in 10 lap. It's not bad. He's got an average finish of 24th over the 5 races. But for Draftkings, that's a tough hill. If he were starting 33rd and had those types of practice speeds, it would be better. But an average finish of 3 spots better, I think at $5,700 just doesn't quite move the needle. And you got to remember, he's going to be in Rick Ware car. I think Justin Haley's a better driver, which improved the Rick Ware. New crew chief, new crew, new everything. It's going to be a shot in the dark for Corey LaJoie to have a good race. And Justin Haley, both, to be perfectly honest. So, if you want it, you need someone cheap. You want Bell and Kyle. Okay. if you want cheap, Zane Smith. Starting a little far up, but we'll get to Zane. I think he's up next. John Hunter's not awful, but the legacy cards, I have a little bit of worry still. They just haven't figured it out yet. But at 5,600, starting in 31st, he finished 13th here in the spring. He's got a 16.3 average finish for all of his races at Kansas. And he won 2 Xfinity races, at least that I remember seeing in the recent years at Kansas. So you could take some John Hunter. He knows how to get around this place. I mean, like I said, his average finish is 16.3 out of the 3 total starts. Yeah, I mean, John Hunter's not a bad flyer to possibly take. He could be kind of sneaky, but I mean, he is a cheap option. Harrison Burton, just starting too far up for me. He outkicked his coverage. He's got an Xfinity ride next year. The Wood brothers got their playoff shot. This race doesn't set up very well for Harrison Burton or Wood brothers. Zane Smith, starting 15th. He was 17th in single lap, 24th in 10 lap consecutive average. Now let's also pull. Let's go here. I want to see what the trend is for Zane Smith, because if I remember well enough, the trend line for Zane Smith is actually probably pretty good. Yeah, for the last 10 races, Zane Smith has had an average starting spot of 25.8 and an average finish of 15.7. He's got 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 15s, and 6 top 20 out of the last 10 races, with an average DraftKings average of 38.4. With people around him, there's nobody even close to Zane Smith. Next closest is Daniel Suarez at a 40.9. So the trend line for Zane Smith is phenomenal. And the trend line for Daniel Hemrick is also pretty good at a 20.9. Justin Haley's at a 21.8. Todd Gilliland's at a 21.0. And Austin Dillon's been trending in the right direction other than where he starts. But, I mean, Zane Smith's been making up, on average, 10.1 spots. And that's out of a full 10 race segment. So I like the Zane Smith call. I'm not sure he gets better than 15th, but if we remember back to our optimal lineups, we had lots of guys that were finishing in the teens that made the optimal lineup because of their price point. Zane Smith fits this criteria really well. I will probably have a decent amount of ownership with Zane Smith. I'll probably have some of Zane Smith. He's got the data. Oh, I've got data beyond data, like enough data that I begin to have my head spin. The Hemrick call is not a bad call either. He was 7th fastest in practice, so I don't mind either Nemechek, Zane, or Hemrick. In fact, you could possibly even run all 3 of those and run the Chase Elliott, Denny, and Kyle. That may not be a bad lineup, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, starting in 30th, we've got some place differential movement here. He was 7th in single lap, 14th in 10 lap consecutive average. Now, he was in the first practice session, which was the faster of the 2 practice sessions. But I don't mind the Daniel Hemrick play. I like the Zane Smith play better. So if I were to list the 3, I would pick Zane Smith first, in my opinion, John Hunter, then Daniel. Ty Dillon, same thing. He was 13th, and this is another Colleague car. And remember, Ty Norris just moved over from Trackhouse to Colleague. Ty Norris was also the brains and minds behind Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and some of the junior motorsports, and then moved over to Trackhouse. Well, he was with Ganassi, and then when Ganassi got bought by Trackhouse, he helped Trackhouse get off the ground, and now Colleague has put Ty Norris in charge of NASCAR division over at Trackhouse, or over at Colleague. So we're going to see probably some decent improvements with Ty Norris being over there. He's just that good of an organizational person, and he makes the team that much better. So I mean, I would be surprised if we're seeing anything that quickly out of Ty Norris, but he's bringing some information from Trackhouse over to Colleague, and it happened already. I don't care. 15's fine with me. I just don't want to crash again. I mean, it is Kansas. It's tough, but no, I think Zane Smith is fine. But the Ty Dillon play is also not awful. 22.5 average finish. He finished in 36 in the spring. Yeah, that's not great. But 13 total races. He's got 5 top 20s and a 21.3 average finish. So I don't mind the Ty Dillon play. Cosgrales starting 34th. He was 34th in both practice speeds. It's his first time here in the Cup car, and this place is a beast in the Cup car. And did Georgia just throw an interception in the end zone? I think so, because Alabama seems to be quite happy and excited. Now Georgia still has 2 timeouts, so anything's possible. But and JJ Haley, he's going to be 5 laps down before we know it, and they'll probably park the car. I thought we were done with starting parks, but for some reason the 44 keeps putting people together. All right, so quick review real fast. I love the Chase Elliott play, of course, starting 38th. He's going to be highly, highly, highly owned. So if you want to be contrarian, don't take Chase Elliott. Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, all really, really of the top 3 picks next to Chase Elliott. Truex Jr. is not a bad play. Bubba Wallace is great. I love Het play. Tyler Reddick in the number 45 at Kansas in the fall race are really, really good. So don't be surprised if Tyler Reddick goes out and wins this race. If you like the weird, odd stuff, I mean, it's also an odd year or an even year. In even years, Joey Logano wins championships. Does Joey Logano go out and have a great race? I don't know. Who's fading Bell? Totally. Don't think. I mean, I've got him ranked 16th. He's starting from the pole. It's dangerous. Both he and Ty Gibbs are dangerous. But here, let's go back real quick to the very beginning. And look at these optimal lineups again. We don't have anybody in the pole. We have an outside pole with Larson here at the full window. Where did it go? All right. So in the spring, we had only one person starting in the top 10 that made the optimal lineup. In the fall race, this race last year, Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott were the only 2 that started in the top 10. Now remember what I was talking about finishes. We had an 11th place, a 13th, and a 14th place finish. We had a 14th and a 21st place finish that ended up making the optimal lineup. Justin Haley, remember we talked, has made the optimal lineup 3 times. Oh my gosh, Georgia won. Good for them. Good for my bet also. And then in the spring of 2023, we had an outside pole. We don't have anybody in the last 4 races that started from the pole that made the optimal lineup. And in fact, we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of whatever that is, 24. 5 out of 24 that have made the optimal lineup that started in the top 5. Yeah. I took the Bama getting 2, actually. Georgia was favored by 2 when I took the bet. Front row starts that started in the top 15, or that finished in the top 15 in Draftkings points this race last year, both finished in the top 15 in Draftkings points. And I tell you what, I can also show you that chart also. Like I said, I've got chart among charts among charts. Where's Kansas? Here's Kansas. So the green marks here are guys that are starting on the front row. I know this gets probably really small on if you happen to be on mobile. Miley says, "I'm sorry, I'm in the beginner contest for a reason." No, yeah, start small. And as always, only bet what you can afford to lose. Do not ever bet more than you can afford to lose. But, as things progress on, you'll also kind of figure out and learn that you've got to. Sometimes being contrarian is very, very important, especially in small field tournaments. In large field tournaments, it's not as important. That's your best chance to win contests listening to guys like this. I appreciate that, James. And all I'm doing is just giving you all the data and information, then I'm giving you some of my opinion. Sometimes my opinion's right, sometimes my opinion's wrong. And I call myself out each week. I'm like, because last week I did not see Kyle Larson leading 462 laps. I was happy as a fan of his for him to do it, but it definitely kind of hurt some of my DraftKings bets. So, I mean, taking somebody from the pole is not absolutely dangerous, but as far as optimal lineups go, he does not fall in. They don't fall into the optimal lineup very often. Christopher Bell in the fall of last year had 37.25 points. Bell had the pole again, 35.6 points. Christopher Bell had the pole again, 54.15 points. Reddick had the pole and ended up with a -10. And then William Byron had the pole and got 49.15. So the best was once at a 54.15, which puts you close to optimal lineup, but probably not because there's a lot of expensive guys on this list. Just $4 beginner tournament. That's fun. I want to bet my brother. Okay. Yeah, I will do my best to get you to beat your brother. And if you do beat your brother and you took some advice from me, you got to come back next week and let me know. That's the only deal I have. And then we can set up and do it again. Like I'm hopefully helping James win a Survivor tournament. But so this is kind of what I start to look at is where these guys are starting and where they're finishing and how they end up in DraftKings points. And is it a ton of place differential that ends up winning some of these tournaments? Is it much more finish up front or start up front, finish up front type of tournaments? It also depends on how many Dominator points that are out there. Like last week, there was a ton of Dominator points. I mean, Kyle Larson last week ended up with 197 points, which is just double what most optimal lineups get. I mean, looking at here for Kansas, this is how dominant last week was for Kyle Larson at 197 points. We had Denny Hamlin, so this is the last 5 years. You've got an 85, a 76, a 100.9, an 81, and an 80. And Kyle Larson last week had 197. So last week's domination was just unreal. But I mean, ideally, what you're looking to potentially do is create a scenario of, okay, when we start to go back and we start to look at these drivers and where they're starting, where their potential is, like, I mean, sure, can any of these 38 guys win this race? Absolutely. They've won races before. Maybe not at the Cup level, but Xfinity, Trucks, ARCA, short tracks, whatever. They have won races. They've probably won championships in some form of motorsports, or they wouldn't be here. This is the best of the best. So they all know how to win races. The question is, who's actually got money enough to win these races on a consistent basis? And that's what you have to go off of when you're making bets and you're doing DraftKings is consistency. Who's consistently going to do it? Sure, you're going to have your one-offs where a Kaz finishes at Bristol in like 12th, which it's not supposed to happen. Rick Ware doesn't have that type of money to put that type of engineering and have the tech support and have the best crew to change tires, all those things. Do I think Elliott's a free square? Absolutely yes, with the asterisk of buyer beware. Everybody's going to have him. You can be contrarian, and I will. I will probably still 40% of my lineups will not have Elliott in them. Between 40 and 45%. I'm going to be well over 50% on Chase Elliott. Because the chances, and that's what we're looking at, is what gives us the best chance to win. The chances are Chase Elliott's going to be probably in the optimal lineup at the end of the race tomorrow. And all he's going to have to do, so once again, to get into the optimal lineup, what do we see? 80. So on the low end, for his price tag, okay, so 62, 70, so 60s. He's going to need to get close to 60 points. Well, he's starting in 38th. Let's say even on a bad day, he's going to get to 18th. That's 20 points of place differential. And then I've got to look at this to see what the points are. I don't have it memorized. 18th. So he gets 20 points plus 25 points. That's 45 points. If he doesn't have any fast laps and doesn't lead any laps, he'll have 45 points, Chase Elliott, just by getting to 18th. Well, what does 45 points get us at his price range? Pretty close. I mean, he's what, $9,000? So I mean, he was $8,100 here. He had 53.15 made the optimal lineup. That was $900 cheaper, but 45 points gets us real close to being in the optimal lineup. Then if we go back and we look at this, what does 45 points get you? Well, it puts you 8th most points in the spring of 23. It's 9th most points in fall of 22. It's 8th. It's 9th. It's 10th. So realistically, 45 points, if Chase Elliott can at least get to 18th, will net him a top 10 DraftKings points day. Is that enough? Probably. But the free square is going to be there for everybody. And that's an easy pick and play. It's a $9,000 pick and play. If I remember that correctly. I think he's $9,000. Oh no, he's 10,000. So that's even more expensive. So I mean that becomes a little bit more risky when it's that expensive. Because if you're thinking about it, if you run a Chase Elliott and you run a Kyle Larson, you're now at 21,500. You're almost halfway through your salary cap. What's my projected ownership on Christopher Bell starting from the pole? Probably, my guess would, I don't do a full-on projected ownership. But I've done this long enough that his ownership is probably going to be 35 to 40% owned. In DraftKings, it's risky to have the pole sitter. And once again, we go back to this chart that I was just showing with you. I mean, Christopher Bell has had the pole at Kansas a lot. And he's finished 8th, and he was 13th in DraftKings points. He finished 6th and finished 13th in DraftKings points. He finished 5th, and he was 6th in DraftKings points. Now, when he didn't start from the pole and he finished in 3rd, he was 5th in DraftKings points. And Christopher Bell finished 36th and finished, I don't even have the number on that one, 36th in points. So many lineups, Larson and Elliott's going to be wild. Yes. And the same amount of lineups are going to be with Hamlin. And yes, it's, yeah, I mean, and that's, so and this is where Matt's not in here because I'm sure Matt's crunching data for NFL. But this is where Matt loves to play the contrarian role, and he loves to find the guys that are going to get overlooked. Like, probably Reddick's going to probably be a little bit on the lower end of ownership because people are going to gravitate to Larson. They're going to gravitate to Hamlin. They're going to gravitate to Elliott. And once you spend that type of money, who gets left out? Well, a Reddick gets left out. I mean, a Bell may get left out, but there's a little more nuance with it. Blaney's probably going to get left out. A William Byron's probably going to get left out. And then you've got a Truex Jr. who's starting in 19th, who has a potential for an easy top 10 run, maybe even top 5. He finished 4th in the spring. You're scared to not take who? Bell? I mean, I would be scared not to take Elliott before I was scared to take Bell. Bell is actually a much scarier play than taking an Elliott. I do like Truex a bit. I think this is a good solid track for Truex. I mean, in the last 5 races, he has 4 top 10s. 11.8 average finish. What is there not to like? He was 11th in practice, and this was in the second practice session, the slower of the 2 practice sessions. He was 11th, 15th in 10-lap consecutive average. Yeah, I actually like Martin Truex Jr. as much as I like probably Chase Elliott. I will probably end up with a fair amount of ownership because once again, if Martin Truex Jr. can go finish 3rd, starting in 19th, what does that get us in points? So let's see, that's 16 points just in place differential, and then a 3rd place finish gets you 41. So what did I say? 16 and 41? That puts you at 57 points. Well, we've already gone back and looked at what 57 points gets you. I mean, that's in this area. That's top 5 DraftKings points on average. Yeah, I like the Martin Truex Jr. play. The only thing that scares me about Martin Truex Jr. is he's had really bad luck lately. That makes it tough. Yeah, I like the Martin Truex Jr. play as much as I like the Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson play. I mean, we're also sitting for there is a potential that we go and see a Ty Gibbs win this race tomorrow, and everybody's like, "Oh wow, didn't see that coming." Why not? This is a Hendrick Joe Gibbs racing style track. They've performed phenomenally well. So yeah. So hopefully that answers a lot of your questions. But yeah, I mean, Miley, if you're trying to beat your brother in DraftKings, Bell is it's a tough call. I don't mind having Bell in some of my lineups, but it makes me much more nervous than taking a Truex Jr. or a Chase Elliott. And that's just my opinion. Some of the data just kind of tells me that. Whenever Christopher Bell is on the pole, he doesn't end up... He finishes the races okay, but he doesn't get enough DraftKings points to satisfy somebody starting in first. Yeah, I like the... And that's the whole thing, is you got to find some contrarian plays. You got to find, I mean, even Joey Logano's probably going to be contrarian. Kyle Busch is probably going to be super under-owned, in my opinion. Buscher's kind of sneaky. I mean, now we're starting to get into the realm where you can kind of play some of these guys because they give you a little bit more money. I mean, the Bowman play is a phenomenal play at $8,000. I mean, look at his practice speeds were 3rd and 2nd. He didn't fall much off on his long run speed. He's got an average finish of 7.5. I mean, his average finishes are right there, just a little bit worse than Hamlin and Larson. And he's been running super well lately. I mean, his average finishes recently have been great. What's his trend line look like? Trend, Alex Bowman. Where you at, Alex? Alex Bowman is averaging a 16.2. He's got 1 win, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 7 top 20s. Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple of races that were not great that pulled his average finish down. But his trend line looks really, really good. I mean, Ross Chastain will probably get overlooked a little bit. He was fastest in practice. Now that's probably going to bump his ownership a little bit because they're going to look at, oh, who was fastest in practice? Oh, he's in 20th. Okay. But then you look at, because the first practice run is the fastest. So it's not always the best comparison. Just because you happen to be first in practice doesn't mean you're going to be as fast in the race, especially since you're not starting up front. Austin Cindric is just not good at this track, so I don't like that call. Daniel Suarez is probably going to get overlooked a little bit, other than maybe being second in fastest practice. And I mean, I would like a great play would have been Noah Gragson, but when we start to look at the innards of what's going on at Stewart-Haas, they're switching crew members around. They're running out of gas, and they're going to put all the gas into Gragson or into Chase Briscoe. Michael Liddell starting in 21st, but his average finish isn't great here. But this would be a sneaky play, and if he hits, nobody else is going to be on him. He's going to have super low ownership. So that's what I was saying about what Matt looks to try to do. Is he likes to be contrarian against the field, and if you run 5 or 6 different lineups with a bunch of different offsets, that's not the chalk, and any of those guys hit with a couple of the chalky guys, nobody's going to have them, and they're going to do really well. Like Carson Hocevar is probably going to get overlooked a little bit because he's starting too far up. I love the Justin. I like the Justin Haley play. The more I look at it and think about it, I think it's a risky play. It definitely becomes contrarian, but he's been in the last 3 optimal lineups. Miley says, I'm learning a lot. I heard Dominator points were important, so I just thought, oh, yeah. Yeah, now Seabell being on the pole has the potential for Dominator points, but you got to remember, what are the stages are what, 80, 80, and 100? Let's see, what are the stages? The stages are 80, 85, and then 100. So even if Christopher Bell gets out and leads, and they're not going to be able to, they can't run the whole thing on, they've got to stop for a pit stop. And more than likely, it's going to be a caution for somebody's going to spin somewhere within the start of this thing. 20 laps in or whatever. And then you've got, okay, can I make it 60 laps? Well, 60 laps is still even a little bit on the tough side on a fuel run for the Cup car here. You can make it on 60, but I mean the tire wear is also decently significant, so it makes it a little tough. So after that point, I get a little worried about Christopher Bell on 1.5-mile style tracks. Now, if this were a mile or 3/4 of a mile and Christopher Bell were sitting on the pole, absolutely I would tell. If this were Richmond, if this were Phoenix, if it were that style track, I would absolutely, hands down, be like, absolutely, you've got to play Christopher Bell. But here, history has told us that Christopher Bell does not lead a ton of laps, and he doesn't finish as well as he needs to for Draftkings points. It's enough for him to move on and advance out of round 2 with the playoffs, sure. And that's what he's concerned with. That's what his team is concerned with. They want to get to round 3. They want to get to Phoenix because he's probably the best odds favorite for Phoenix. I'm looking at what do I need for this guy to do for this round right now, this race. This is what I need, and I don't know if Christopher Bell is that fully. Now he's going to want to have decent stage points because you want to get a buffer. They're going to Talladega next week. It's a crapshoot there. So these guys are going to want good finishes, and they're going to want good stages. Priest starting 37th at $6,100. Talk me out of that. Now I don't mind taking a little bit of ownership in Priest. Look at what is going on at the innards of Stewart-Haas Racing. We're already seeing a fair amount of movement with crew guys that are being moved to the 14 car. 14 cars in the round of 12. The 14 car probably is going to be continued to be owned by Stewart or owned by Haas next year. So every position that they can improve improves their money financial situation for the next 3 years. They are going to dump everything that is inside that organization into that 14 car. Well, where are they going to get that from? They're going to get it from the 41 car. They're going to get it from the 10 car. They're going to get it from the 4 car. So they're going to start piecemealing it out. Ryan Preece is also not great at 1.5-mile style tracks. I can pull the full data on that. You said you want me to talk you out of it, so I may or may not talk you out of it. I don't know. We'll see. Ryan Preece. Average starting spot of 29th, average finish of 19.3. So he does do better on 1.5-mile style tracks. That includes Texas, Charlotte, Vegas, Kansas, Miami, Michigan. So I don't mind the Ryan Preece move. I will have some ownership in Ryan Preece. He's starting next to last. He's starting next to Chase Elliott. I mean, hell, all he's got to do is just attach to Chase Elliott's bumper and get himself into position. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's $6,100 and a guy that's $10,000. They're both starting almost equivalent. And if Ryan Preece can get to 20th at $6,100, that's going to be 44 points. Well, okay, let's go back to this again. What does 44 points get you on average? It's probably more like here. That gets you 10th in Draftkings. It's a lot riskier, though, with a Ryan Preece than it is a Chase Elliott. Hendrick Motorsports, number 9, the crew chief, the crew, everything that goes around Chase Elliott is 3 times as good as what's going on at Ryan Preece's shop right now in the 41 car that's being sold, that they're stealing crew and resources to give to another team in that organization, where everybody at Hendrick is still in the chase, and they've got more money than God. So when you look at it, it's riskier to take a Preece than it is to take an Elliott, but you're saving $4,000. You get $4,000 of salary cap. I don't mind it when you look at it with the $6,100 play, but you also have to remember what you're potentially buying for that $4,000 savings. You get what you pay for, and the potential of him having a 29th place finish, even starting 37th, is probably not enough. Let's see, what does that end up being? 29th place finish gets you 13 points, and he's going to improve by, what do we say? He's going to improve by 8 spots, so it's going to get you 21 points if he finishes 29th. That is somewhere around 24th, 25th in DraftKings place. Not sure if I talked you out of it or talked you into it, but it's risky. So, I mean, do weird things happen in these races? Absolutely. That's kind of the lottery system behind DraftKings. But I've also had quarterbacks that were going to have 300-yard days, and on the second play from scrimmage, they twist their knee and they're out for the game. And I put money for them to have a 300-yard game. Well, it's just like Kyle Larson going out and hitting the wall at lap 25. You know, the guy's supposed to go out and win the damn race, and now he's hit the wall and he's done. Well, that ruined half my lineups. That happened at Atlanta. So I mean, the best of the best have the worst days sometimes. The worst of the worst have good days sometimes. So that's where the tricky part of this whole thing comes in and that's why I don't. When somebody said is Chase Elliott a free square, well, I mean, kind of, but maybe not. I like that free square more than I like the Ryan Preece. Yeah, it's high variance, high entertainment, it's all of the things, and that's what makes NASCAR so cool. And I mean, and honestly, that's what makes NFL cool. It's what makes college football. That's what makes sports cool. Is on any given Sunday or any given Saturday or any given day, anybody in the professional sports world can beat another team, unless if you're the White Sox. I don't think the White Sox are that good right now. I don't keep up with baseball as much as I used to, but regardless, yeah. And that's what we're doing. We're looking for odds. We're looking for, the potential of, okay, yes, if we start to think about it, who's really good at Kansas? Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick. I mean, we can start to just look up here. We've got Bush is not bad. Chase Elliott seems to be up there quite a bit. Mark Truex Jr. is up there quite a bit. So there are guys that gravitate to the tops of these tracks, and there are guys that gravitate to the bottom of these tracks. Now, does that mean on any given day that one of the guys that runs really well here typically has a bad day or has a mechanical issue? I mean, these cars are so sensitive. You hit that outside wall just slightly wrong, and your toe link's bent, and now you're behind the wall, and you're not going to finish the race. Or, does Corey LaJoie, Justin Haley, Zane Smith hit it just right on their setups? And I'm telling you, you hit these things just right on their setups, and they're hard to beat. I mean, look at Kyle Larson last week. They just hit the setup, and nobody was going to touch him. So, yeah, high variance, high entertainment, high reward. To win the tournaments, there's got to be a little luck, and you've got to have the oddball in your lineup. It's a lot of times in football, there's two players that were 2% owned that you took, that they both had unbelievably career days. And then you win Millie Makers, and you win $10,000 pots, and you win those types of things. Same thing happens in NASCAR. I mean, we look at these optimal lineups. Where are they? We look at these optimal lineups. I mean, you've got a $6,100 guy, a $5,800 guy that made the optimal lineup. $6,500 guy, $5,500 guy. $6,000 guy, $5,200 guy. $5,800 guy, and the $7,000 guy. There's almost always 2 to 3, and that's why I put this value. The value pick is just as important as how many values need to come into this. We get to Talladega next week. This value play is going to be 4, 5, 6. We're gonna talk about leaving $10,000 of salary cap on the table. This week, not so much. I mean, if you look at it, the spring race had $1,300 left in salary cap. The Kansas race in the fall of 23 had none. We used all of it. We had $200 left on this one and $400 left on this one. So the odds are, most of the time, you're not using all of your salary cap in DFS NASCAR. Every once in a blue moon, it hits. I think last week, actually, let's look at Bristol. I think Bristol, out of all races last week, all the salary cap was used. Nothing was left. And that was probably the other problem, is I almost always leave money on the table, because the averages are lean towards there's money left over. Now, compared to the Talladega races and the Daytona races, it's completely different. Most of the time, it's $800 to $200 is left over. Talladega, Daytona, Atlanta, it's $5,000 to $10,000 left over. Andrew says, looks like you don't want to leave too much on the table. Yeah, I think for the majority of tracks outside of the super speedways, you typically want to have $200 to $800 left over. It's ideal. Like, I typically almost always, I think I probably, out of my 40 lineups, I probably max my salary cap twice out of 40. So 2.5% of the time, is that what that is? Or 5% of the time? So super speedways I do terrible on. What? Why do you do terrible on super speedways if you watch this channel? You don't take anybody starting in the top 10. Plain and simple. Super speedway, do not ever take anybody starting in the top 10. Now, Atlanta's starting to change a little bit. Talladega and Daytona, why you would take anybody starting in the top 10 in points, or top 10, that's beyond me. Because there is absolutely no denominator points at all at super speedways. I can prove it for the last 20 years. It never happens. The draft has just changed because the fast laps get spread. Nobody gets more than like 9 fast laps. You don't have a Kyle Larson who's got 81 fast laps. You definitely don't have anybody leading 462 laps because they only race 180 laps. There's not enough laps to get dominator points, much less because of the draft. BJ McLeod 1 year had 9 fast laps. He's not the fastest car out there, but because he can just hold on to the train, he gets a fast lap. So, yeah, you don't take anybody in the top 10. I don't know what to tell you. Next week, Talladega, come sit, we'll talk, and we'll go about it. Now, that's absolutely just for Draftkings. Yeah, there's nothing cute about super speedways. Literally, there was a Talladega. Was it Talladega? I think it was a Talladega race that literally. I wonder if I could find that. Hold on one second. There was a Talladega race. Hold on one second. Let me pull this up. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on one second. There was a Talladega race. I think it was 2023. Where literally, if you took the 6 cheapest guys, oh no, it was the Atlanta 2022 race, I think. Oops, hold on, I know. I hate not having stuff right in front of me. Where was it though? Oh, here it is. Atlanta back markers. Yeah. So the back markers, literally the cheapest guys, 4,800 to 5,400. You had $19,400 left over. That was the spring. So here's the optimal lineup. Now let's put these side by side if I can. Boy. Yeah, so if we look at this, 278.65, and this was with the cheapest lineup. Now, the optimal lineup at the Atlanta, this is the very first race at the new configuration, was a 38.95, but yeah, you could have literally taken the back markers, and I still think the back markers still cashed at 278 points. Yeah, so just be here next week. We'll go over Talladega. I will bring you all the data on how to win the race, and don't overthink it. Don't get too cute. Miley says, is the $9,000 range going to be under-owned? Okay, like Larson, Hamlin, Elliott, you have $5,833 left. I think what you're saying is on average. Then I'll so what you're asking for is the $9,000 guys, because all right, let's go real quick. Let's see. So let's just put a lineup together real quick. So what you're saying is if you take Larson, Hamlin, Elliott, you've got an average of $5,833 left over, $17,500, which is, and you're having to scrub the bottom. But we talked about taking a Haley. We talked about taking a Zane Smith. And you've got $5,700 left over. You could go with John Hunter Nemechek. There's $100 left over, and there's your lineup. And you've got, I mean, that's not a bad lineup. In my opinion, it's a little risky with the Justin Haley starting where he is, also Zane Smith starting where he is. But that's probably not a bad lineup. Is that, Miley, is that enough to beat your brother? Maybe. All depends. I mean, I've also seen John Hunter Nemechek wreck 5 laps into a race. I've seen the same thing happen with Zane. I've seen the same thing happen with Kyle Larson in Atlanta. He wrecked 23 laps into it. Or 25 laps into it. He was the favorite to win, one of the favorites to win. So, yeah, you can. There is that build. That's, looking at it, it seems like a dangerous build. But for tournaments, sometimes you've got to be on the edge like that. There's probably not a whole lot of people that are going to put John Hunter Nemechek, Zane Smith, and Justin Haley together. So I don't know. Maybe. Try it. I might try it in a couple of my lineups. I don't know. I mean, if I tie with somebody, I tie with somebody. If it happens to be in first place and I tie with somebody in first place, I'm not going to cry about it. I typically don't build and share lineups on here. But we're so far into it now, I don't mind. But either way, it is now past midnight on the East Coast, and I think I've been on here way too long. 2 hours and 13 minutes. Yeah, I'm an hour over. But I don't mind helping out when I've got guys asking questions and all that. I asked about Priest because of starting to build up lineups. Yeah. Does Priest fit that lineup somewhere? Let's see. Can we build that with Priest? But Priest kind of scares me a little bit. Like I said, and I kind of gave the reasons why. I mean, does Priest scare me? I almost like Priest more than I like Haley, and that fits. And does that change anything? I mean, it does. For some reason, it always makes me really nervous to take the guys that are starting last and next to last. I don't know why. I think it's just a mind block that I have. And I also just know that when I look at optimal lineups, that typically one of these two guys they're there for a reason. And I know the reason why Chase Elliott's there. I don't really fully understand the reason behind Ryan Priest. I have a really good idea, but I know why Chase Elliott is in that spot. Plain and simple. They had a bad engine. They had a cylinder going down. They replaced the engine. They replaced it with a Rick Hendrick built engine. Could it fail? Sure. But Hendrick Motorsports has not had many engine failures this year. Sorry for keeping. No, you didn't keep me. I mean, I've finished watching the football game, and I'm kind of going through these things in my head for when I build up lineups tomorrow. I'm gonna rock with Bubba. Best of luck with your laps. Yeah, I'll be rooting for the Bubba play tomorrow for you. And yeah, that Alabama game turned into a barn burner of a game. Classic, instant classic in my opinion. But either way, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I think I've got the most viewers I've ever had in one night. So I appreciate everybody tuning in and hitting that like and subscribe button. That really helps out the algorithm and everything. Yeah, I mean, I had 172 total viewers tonight, which is definitely almost a record. I've got 8 likes, so if you're still watching, hit that like button. And yeah, hopefully I can get to 100 subscribers. I think, Miley, you got me one more spot closer. I think I'm up to probably 97 or 98 at this point. So love to make it to 100 by the end of the year. If not, let's see, Talladega next weekend. That is a Sunday afternoon race. So once again, we will be doing this Saturday night again. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and good luck. Let me know how everybody did. Send me a message if you happen to take open a bag. And Miley, if you beat your brother, make sure you show up next week and brag about it. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. I appreciate it. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so got to be around the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Hell yeah! Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job. 10-4. Great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal and got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away.
Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job.
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.